Cover-up makeup had become second nature to Olivia Carter over the past 6 months. Foundation 3 shades darker than her natural skin tone layered thick over purple fingerprints circling her left wrist. Concealer dabbed carefully along her collarbone, where Ryan's grip had left marks like a necklace she never asked for. The long-sleeved gray shirt she wore to work at Castellano's hid most of it, even though the upscale Italian restaurant's kitchen was hot enough to make her sweat through her uniform by hour 3. Friday nights were controlled chaos. The restaurant in downtown Chicago attracted a specific crowd, businessmen closing deals over expensive wine couples, celebrating anniversaries, families spending money they wanted everyone to see them spending. Olivia was 25 years old, 1 semester away from finishing her nursing degree, and she served them all with a smile that felt painted on as thick as her makeup. "Table 12 needs water, Olivia," Marco, the floor manager, barked as he passed. "And fix your hair. You look exhausted." She was exhausted. Ryan had kept her up until 3 a.m. pacing their apartment, throwing accusations like punches until the actual punches came. Her crime this time, refusing to quit school. He wanted her home available dependent. The nursing program was her escape plan, though she'd never said that aloud. 6 more months until graduation. 6 more months until she could support herself and Mia without relying on tips and Ryan's increasingly unpredictable moods. Olivia tucked a strand of light brown hair back into her ponytail and grabbed the water pitcher. Her reflection in the polished chrome surface showed shadows under her blue-gray eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. 25 going on 50, her classmate had joked last week. She'd meant it kindly, but the truth stung. Table 12 was in the VIP section, cordoned off by velvet ropes in ambient lighting that cost more to install than Olivia made in 6 months. 4 men sat there, all wearing dark suits that fit with the kind of precision that meant tailored, not bought off a rack. The air around them felt different, charged with an authority that made other diners instinctively lower their voices when passing nearby. The man at the head of the table made Olivia pause mid-step. He was maybe 45, with black hair styled back from a face that belonged in old Italian paintings. Strong features, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they looked black in the restaurant's dim lighting. A thin scar traced along his chin, white against olive skin. His suit jacket hung on the back of his chair, white shirt, open at the collar, revealing a thick gold chain that caught the light when he moved. Olivia had served hundreds of wealthy men. This one felt different. Dangerous maybe, or just powerful in a way that didn't need volume or theatrics. "Water," she offered, keeping her voice steady. "Please," he said. His accent was subtle American, but shaped by something else underneath. Italian heritage, probably, given the restaurant choice and the gold chain. "And menus for my associates." She distributed menus, filled water glasses, went through her rehearsed spiel about tonight's specials. The man at the head of the table, the one with the scar, didn't look at his menu. He watched her instead, not in the way customers usually did, not assessing, not objectifying. Observing, like he was reading a language written in her posture and movements. "I'll give you a few minutes to decide," she said, already backing away. Back in the kitchen, she pressed her palms against the stainless steel counter, trying to slow her heartbeat. The heat from the industrial ovens made the air thick, hard to breathe. Maria, another server, gave her a concerned look while plating desserts. "You okay, Olivia?" "Fine, just tired." "Table 12 is Dominic Ricci," Maria whispered, glancing toward the VIP section through the kitchen window. "He owns half the Italian businesses on the north side. Be extra careful with them. Marco's been stressed all week knowing he was coming." Olivia nodded, filed the information away, and went back to work. Over the next hour, she served appetizers, entrees, more wine. Dominic Ricci remained quiet throughout, letting his associates carry the conversation while he ate with precise, economical movements. But she felt his attention tracking her even when she wasn't at their table. Every time she passed nearby, every time she served another section, those dark eyes found her. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in months. She was clearing their appetizer plates when it happened. Her sleeve caught on the edge of a water glass. She grabbed for it, overcorrected, and stumbled. The tray tilted dangerously, 6 expensive wine glasses sliding toward catastrophe. Dominic's hand shot out faster than she could process, catching her elbow, steadying her before disaster struck. "Careful," he said quietly. His grip was firm but not painful, nothing like Ryan's hands, which always squeezed too hard, left marks that lasted days. This was controlled strength of power that chose restraint. But in steadying her, he'd pushed her sleeve up past her wrist. The bruises were visible, unmistakable. 4 distinct finger marks, purple fading to yellow at the edges, circling her arm like a brand. Dominic's eyes dropped to her wrist, then rose to her face. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Something shifted in his expression, a coldness settling in that made the air feel heavier, more dangerous. "Who did that to you?" The question came out flat, but underneath it ran something volcanic. His 3 associates had stopped talking, all attention suddenly on their interaction. "I'm sorry," she stammered, pulling her arm back, tugging the sleeve down with her free hand. "I'm fine, it's nothing." "That's not nothing. I hit it on a door. Stupid accident. I'm clumsy sometimes." His dark eyes held hers for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. He knew she was lying. She knew he knew. But something in his face told her he wouldn't push, wouldn't force her to admit what they both understood. "Be more careful," he said finally, releasing her arm with deliberate gentleness. "Doors can be dangerous." The way he said doors made it clear they were no longer talking about furniture. She finished clearing their table with shaking hands, hyper-aware of his attention, tracking her every movement for the rest of the meal. He noticed when she adjusted her sleeve 3 times in as many minutes. Noticed when she flinched at Marco's raised voice from across the room. Noticed the careful way she carried heavy trays, favoring her left side where her ribs still ached from Tuesday's argument. When she brought the check, she expected him to say something else to push the issue. He didn't. Just signed the receipt with elegant script, stood and buttoned his jacket with practiced ease. His associates filed out first, nodding respectfully to him before leaving. Dominic paused beside the table and she realized he'd left something behind. $500 bills sat folded under his water glass, crisp and new. Underneath, a business card with embossed lettering on the front and a phone number written in neat script on the back. "In case you ever need help with any more doors," he said, meeting her eyes one last time. "Day or night, that number reaches me directly." Then he walked out, moving through the restaurant with the kind of presence that made people step aside without conscious thought. She stood there with trembling hands, staring at a tip that represented 2 weeks of work and a business card that felt heavier than it should. Marco appeared at her elbow within seconds, eyes wide. "What did you do to earn that?" "Nothing," she said truthfully. But as she pocketed the card and the money, she knew that wasn't entirely accurate. Dominic Ricci had seen something in those bruises, something that triggered a response she didn't fully understand. Recognition, maybe, or rage on behalf of someone he didn't even know. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She served tables, smiled at customers, avoided Marco's suspicious glances, but her mind kept returning to that moment when Dominic's hand had caught her arm, the careful way he'd held her like she was something fragile that might break with too much pressure. Ryan had never touched her like that, not even in the beginning when things were good. His hands always took demanded control. This stranger's hands had steadied, protected, then released without expectation. By the time she clocked out at midnight, October, rain had started falling, turning Chicago streets slick and reflecting neon signs in distorted colors. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, already dreading the bus ride home and whatever mood Ryan would be in when she got there. The business card sat in her wallet right behind her driver's license, where she'd see it every time she looked. She should have thrown it away. Should have taken the tip as luck and forgotten the whole encounter. Should have known better than to accept anything from a man like Dominic Ricci, whose name Maria had spoken with a mixture of respect and fear. Instead, she traced her fingers over the embossed letters as she waited for the bus, memorizing the number on the back, even though she told herself she'd never use it, just in case. Because for the first time in 6 months, someone had noticed. Someone had seen past the smile and the makeup and the lies about doors. And that small recognition felt like oxygen after months of suffocating. The bus arrived, doors hissing open. She climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and watched Chicago blur past the rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow she had an 8-hour clinical rotation at the hospital, then another shift at Castellano's. Tomorrow Ryan would probably apologize like he always did, swear it wouldn't happen again like he always did, make promises they both knew he wouldn't keep. But tonight she had $500 and a phone number, and the memory of dark eyes that had looked at her bruises was something that felt dangerously close to fury. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had that morning. Saturday afternoon hit Olivia like a hangover she hadn't earned. 4 hours of sleep, clinical rotation at the hospital from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then straight to Castellanos for a double shift that wouldn't end until midnight. Her nursing instructor had pulled her aside after rounds to ask if everything was okay at home. The exhaustion must have shown through the makeup. She'd lied, said she was fine, said she'd been studying late. The instructor hadn't believed her, but had let it go. The restaurant was already filling up when she arrived Chicago's wealthy, taking advantage of the unseasonably warm October afternoon. By 6 p.m., every table in her section was full, and Marco was snapping orders at her like she was personally responsible for the kitchen being backed up. She was refilling water glasses at table 7 when she saw him through the front window. Ryan. Her stomach dropped so fast she nearly spilled water across the white tablecloth. He was weaving slightly on the sidewalk outside that particular sway that meant he'd been drinking since noon. His shirt was wrinkled tie, loosened hair disheveled. He'd clearly come straight from wherever he'd spent his afternoon drowning whatever anger had been festering since their fight. He pushed through the restaurant door with enough force to make the hostess jump back. His eyes scanned the dining room until they found her, and the expression on his face made her blood freeze. Olivia, his voice cut through the ambient dinner conversation like a knife. We need to talk. Now. Marco appeared from the kitchen, his face already red with stress. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave. I'm not talking to you. Ryan shoved past the hostess stand, making his way toward her section. Olivia, did you hear me? Diners were staring now. A man at table 4 had his phone out, probably ready to call the police. She sat down the water pitcher with shaking hands and moved to intercept Ryan before he could reach deeper into the restaurant. Ryan, please, she said quietly. I'm working. We can talk later. We'll talk now. He grabbed her wrist, the same one Dominic had seen bruised last night. His fingers dug into the tender flesh, making her gasp. You're my girlfriend. You don't get to ignore my calls all day. Sir, release her immediately or I'm calling the police, Marco said, but his voice held uncertainty. He was a manager, not security, and Ryan outweighed him by 40 pounds. She belongs to me, Ryan snarled. I don't need your permission to talk to what's mine. He yanked Olivia toward the door. She stumbled, nearly falling, and he jerked her upright with enough force to wrench her shoulder. The pain shot down her arm, sharp and immediate. You're hurting me, she managed. Good. Maybe you'll remember it next time you think about ignoring me. They burst through the front door into the cooling evening air. Ryan didn't stop on the sidewalk. He dragged her around the corner into the narrow service alley that ran between Castellanos and the neighboring building. Rain from earlier had left puddles on the uneven pavement, trash bins creating shadows in the fading light. He slammed her against the brick wall hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. His forearm pressed across her throat, cutting off her air supply. The smell of whiskey rolled off him in waves. 2 years, he said, his face inches from hers. 2 years I've supported you, put up with your school nonsense, and this is how you repay me. Flirting with customers. I wasn't, she gasped, trying to push against his arm. Ryan, I can't breathe. You think I didn't see how you looked at that guy last night? The one who left you that ridiculous tip. You think I'm stupid. His grip tightened. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Her lungs screamed for oxygen. This was it, she realized with strange clarity. This was how Ryan finally killed her, in an alley behind the restaurant where she'd been trying so hard to build a future without him. Then suddenly the pressure was gone. Ryan flew backward like he'd been hit by a car crashing into the opposite wall, with a sound that would have been satisfying if she wasn't too busy gasping for air. She collapsed against the brick, hand at her throat, trying to understand what had just happened. Dominic Ricci stood in the alley entrance, perfectly still, except for his eyes. Those dark eyes that had noticed her bruises last night now tracked Ryan with the kind of focus a wolf gives to wounded prey. He wore a different suit today. Charcoal gray, still immaculate, despite having just thrown a grown man across an alley. You made a mistake, Dominic said quietly. Ryan pushed himself upright, too drunk and stupid to recognize the danger he was in. Who the hell are you? Someone who doesn't like seeing women treated like property. Ryan laughed, the sound ugly and aggressive. He charged forward, throwing a wild punch that Dominic sidestepped with minimal effort. Before Ryan could recover his balance, two other men appeared in the alley. One of them, older, with graying hair at his temples, caught Ryan's arm and twisted it behind his back with professional efficiency. "This is none of your business," Ryan grunted, struggling against the hold. "That's my girlfriend." "No," Dominic said, moving toward Olivia. "She's not." He crouched down to her level where she'd slid to sit against the wall, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not touching. "Are you hurt?" She tried to speak but only managed to cough. Her throat felt crushed, each breath painful. Dominic's jaw tightened. He stood turned back to Ryan with the kind of calm that felt more threatening than any rage. "Luca, take him. He'll be dealt with appropriately." "You can't just take me," Ryan protested as the man Dominic had called Luca began forcing him toward a black car idling at the alley entrance. "Olivia, tell them. Tell them we're together." She said nothing, just watched as they loaded him into the back seat like cargo. Dominic returned his attention to her, and this time he did touch, helping her to her feet with the same careful gentleness from last night. "Can you walk?" She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. He kept one hand on her elbow as they made their way back into the restaurant through the rear kitchen entrance. Marco rushed over immediately, taking in her appearance, the red marks already forming on her throat. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. I should have called the police faster." "She needs to go home," Dominic interrupted. His voice held an authority that made Marco's mouth snap shut. "I'll see that she gets there safely. Pay her for the full shift." "Of course, Mr. Ricci, of course." She found her purse in the back room, accepted her jacket from Maria, who looked like she wanted to ask questions but didn't dare. Dominic led her out the front door to where another black car waited, driver already behind the wheel. He opened the back door for her, waited until she was settled, then slid in beside her. The car pulled away from the curb smoothly, no squealing tires or dramatic acceleration. Just quiet, professional competence. "Where do you live?" Dominic asked. She gave him the address of her apartment, her voice returning as a raspy whisper. He relayed it to the driver, then turned back to her. "How long, what? How long has he been hurting you?" The directness of the question, the way he didn't dance around it or let her pretend, broke something open inside her. 6 months. Maybe longer if you count the verbal stuff. "Why didn't you leave?" "I tried, he found me, convinced me to come back, said he'd change." She stared at her hands, at the bruises circling her wrist. "And I believed him because it was easier than being alone." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. The Chicago streets slid past the tinted windows, familiar and foreign at the same time. Finally, he spoke. "My father used to beat my mother. Started when I was 5. Got worse as I got older. I'd hear her crying in the bathroom at night. See the bruises she'd try to hide." His voice held no emotion, just flat recitation of facts. "When I was 16, I got big enough to stop him. Told him if he ever touched her again, I'd kill him." She looked at him. "Did he, No, he died of a heart attack 6 months later. Natural causes, though. I can't say I mourned much." He met her eyes. "My mother wasted 20 years on a man who saw her as something to own and break. I swore I'd never let that happen to anyone I could protect." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." The car pulled up in front of her building, a tired walk-up in a neighborhood that pretended to be nicer than it was. Dominic got out first, scanned the street with practiced assessment, then opened her door. "Will you be safe here tonight?" "Ryan won't come back," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure of that. "No," Dominic agreed, "he won't." Something in the way he said it made her understand that Ryan Sullivan would never bother anyone again. She should have been horrified, should have demanded to know what "dealt with appropriately" actually meant. Instead, she felt the first full breath she'd taken in 6 months. She watched Dominic's car pull away from the curb, taillights disappearing into Chicago's Saturday night traffic. Her apartment building stood behind her, 5 stories of weathered brick and broken promises. The street was quiet, too quiet after the chaos of the evening. Ryan's keys were still in her purse. His toothbrush sat in her bathroom. His clothes hung in half her closet. But somehow, standing there alone on the sidewalk, she knew he'd never use any of them again. The knowledge should have terrified her. Instead, she felt nothing but an exhausted kind of relief. She climbed the 3 flights to her apartment, each step reminding her of new bruises forming under her clothes. The lock turned smoothly. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it that morning. Dishes in the sink, nursing textbooks scattered across the coffee table, Mia's school photos on the refrigerator. Normal. Safe. Hers. She locked the door, engaged the chain, then checked every window, twice old habits from 6 months of living with someone who used his fists when words failed him. Except now, the person she was afraid of wouldn't be coming back. Sleep didn't come easily. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Dominic's words. He'll be dealt with appropriately. The careful way Luca had forced Ryan into that car. The absolute certainty in Dominic's voice when he said Ryan would never bother anyone again. What had she done? What had she allowed to happen? But even as the questions circled her mind, exhaustion pulled her under. Sunday morning brought rain against the windows and the shrill ring of her phone. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Miss Carter, a woman's voice, professional and slightly concerned. This is Officer Jennifer Mills with Chicago PD. We need to ask you some questions about Ryan Sullivan. Her stomach dropped. What about him? When was the last time you saw Mr. Sullivan? She sat up slowly, mind racing. Yesterday, late afternoon, he came to my workplace, Castellano's restaurant on West Madison. Yes, and after that he left. I don't know where he went. Not technically a lie. She didn't know where Luca had taken him. Mr. Sullivan's vehicle was found abandoned near Montrose Harbor early this morning. His wallet and phone were inside. We're trying to establish a timeline of his movements yesterday evening. The rain picked up, drumming harder against the glass. She wrapped her free arm around herself, suddenly cold. I don't know anything about that. We broke up. He showed up at my work drunk and angry. The manager had him removed. Removed by whom? I don't know. Some customers helped. Everything happened so fast. Officer Mills was quiet for a moment. Olivia could hear papers shuffling. Miss Carter, we have a report that Mr. Sullivan was physically aggressive with you yesterday. Is that accurate? Her hand went to her throat, to the tender bruises his fingers had left. Yes. And you didn't call the police? It was over before I could. The customers intervened. More silence. More shuffling. We may need you to come in for a formal statement. Someone will be in touch. The call ended. She sat holding the phone, staring at Ryan's contact information, still saved in her contacts. Should she delete it? Keep it as evidence of what? Her hands shook as she set the phone down. A knock at the door made her jump so hard she nearly fell off the bed. She approached cautiously, looked through the peephole. Dominic Ricci stood in the hallway holding a small black bag and 2 cups of coffee. She opened the door. You didn't sleep, he observed, taking in her appearance. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes, hair tangled, face bare of the makeup she usually hid behind. Not much. May I come in? She stepped back, let him enter her small apartment. He looked out of place here, too polished and powerful for her secondhand furniture and peeling linoleum. But he moved through the space like he belonged, setting the coffee on her kitchen counter, opening the black bag to reveal medical supplies. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of her mismatched kitchen chairs. I'm fine. You're not, and lying about it doesn't help either of us. She sat. He pulled the other chair close, began examining her throat with gentle fingers. The bruises had darkened overnight, Ryan's handprint visible in purple and red. This needs ice, Dominic said, standing to raid her freezer. He wrapped ice cubes in a dish towel, pressed it carefully against her neck. Hold it there. 15 minutes. He returned to his bag, pulled out arnica gel, antibiotic ointment, bandages, professional supplies, the kind that suggested he'd done this before. The police called, she said quietly. They found Ryan's car by the lake. Dominic's hands didn't pause in their work, spreading gel over the bruises on her wrist. What did you tell them? The truth. That he came to the restaurant drunk, that he was removed, that I don't know where he went after. Good. Is he dead? The question hung between them, heavy and unavoidable. Dominic finished treating her wrist, carefully wrapped it, then met her eyes directly. Ryan Sullivan will never hurt you or anyone else again. That's all you need to know. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm giving you. What happened to him was a consequence of his own actions. He put his hands on you. In my world, that has a price. She pulled her hand back, cradling it against her chest. Your world. What is your world exactly? Complicated. I gathered that much from the way everyone at the restaurant treats you. Dominic stood, moved to her kitchen sink, washed his hands with the same methodical care he'd shown treating her injuries. When he turned back, his expression held something she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability, maybe, or just exhaustion. I grew up watching my father terrorize my mother, he said. Started when I was 5. Got worse every year. He'd come home drunk, find something wrong with dinner, or the house, or just the way she looked at him. Then he'd use his fists to correct her. He leaned against her counterarms crossed, but his posture held tension that suggested the memories still cut deep. I was too small to stop it. Could only listen through my bedroom door while she tried not to scream, tried not to wake me up, even though I was already awake, already hearing everything. How old were you when it stopped? 16. I'd gotten big enough by then, strong enough. Came home one day and found him beating her in the kitchen. Something snapped in me. He looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. I put him in the hospital for 3 days. Told him if he ever touched her again, I'd kill him. Did he, No, had a heart attack 6 months later. Doctor said it was stress and poor diet, but I think it was fear. Fear that next time I wouldn't stop at a warning. Rain continued its assault on the windows. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried. Normal sounds of normal life. My mother wasted 20 years on a man who saw her as property to damage, Dominic continued. By the time she was free, she'd forgotten who she'd been before him. That's what men like Ryan do. They don't just hurt you physically. They erase you piece by piece until there's nothing left but fear. I was going to leave, she said, after graduation. I had it planned, new city, new job. He wouldn't have been able to find me. Maybe, or maybe he would have. And next time there wouldn't have been anyone to pull him off you. Dominic moved back to the table, crouched down so they were eye level. I'm not asking for gratitude. I'm not asking for anything. But I need you to understand that what happened to Ryan wasn't random violence. It was protection of you, of the next woman he would have hurt, of everyone his existence threatened. The ice had melted in the towel she held against her throat. Dominic took it from her, disappeared into her bathroom, returned with a fresh, cold compress. The police will investigate, he said, pressing the new compress into her hand. They'll ask questions. They'll probably talk to you again. All you know is that Ryan showed up at your workplace drunk and aggressive. Customers intervened, and you never saw him after that. The truth, selective truth, the safest truth. He stood packed up, his medical supplies with efficient movements. At her door, he paused. I'm having someone watch your building for the next few days. Why are you doing this? Because no one did it for my mother, because I can. He opened the door, then looked back one more time. And because when I saw those bruises on your wrist Friday night, I recognized them. Recognized what they meant. What they would keep meaning if someone didn't stop it. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in her apartment with ice against her throat and questions she knew better than to ask. What Olivia didn't know as she stood in her small kitchen holding the melting ice compress against her bruised throat was that 16 stories above a darkened street 3 miles away, Ryan Sullivan was attempting to explain to Dominic Ricci why he shouldn't die for the marks he'd left on her skin. It was an argument he would not win. Monday brought more police. A detective, this time older, with tired eyes and a wedding ring worn thin from years of service. Detective James Williams sat across from Olivia in her living room asking the same questions Officer Mills had asked, looking for inconsistencies that didn't exist because she'd told the truth. Just not all of it. You and Mr. Sullivan were in a relationship for 2 years, Detective Williams said, reviewing his notes. Were there previous incidents of violence? Yes. Did you ever file a report? No. Why not? Because Ryan had convinced her it was her fault. Because filing a report would have made it real. Because she was ashamed. She gave the detective a simpler answer. I was scared. He nodded like he'd heard it before. Probably had. The customers who intervened at the restaurant Saturday night, can you describe them? It happened fast. I was focused on breathing. But you saw them. Dark suits, professional looking. I didn't get names. The restaurant manager said one of them was Dominic Ricci. Her face remained carefully neutral. I don't know who that is. Detective Williams studied her for a long moment. They both knew she was lying. They both knew he couldn't prove it. Miss Carter, if you know something about Mr. Sullivan's whereabouts. I don't. It would be better to tell us now. I told you everything I know. He left his card and said to call if she remembered anything else. She put it in the drawer with Dominic's card and tried not to think about how her life had become a collection of phone numbers she might never use. That afternoon, her phone rang again. Not police this time. A lawyer, a smooth voice with expensive diction, saying Dominic had retained his services on her behalf should she need legal representation during the investigation into Ryan's disappearance. She thanked him, saved the number, added it to the collection. Ryan Sullivan had been gone for 48 hours. His car sat in an impound lot waiting for forensics that would find nothing useful. His apartment remained untouched, rent paid through the end of the month by automatic withdrawal. And Olivia went to class Monday evening like nothing had changed. Took notes on pharmacology and wound care. Practiced starting IVs on rubber arms that didn't bruise. Normal, safe, hers. The bruises on her throat would fade. The ones on her wrist already looked better thanks to Dominic's careful treatment. In a week, maybe two, there would be no physical evidence Ryan had ever touched her. But she'd carry the weight of what she'd allowed to happen for much longer than that. When she returned home that night, she found Mia sitting cross-legged on the couch, chemistry textbook open on her lap, but her attention focused on her phone. At 16, Mia Carter already showed signs of the beauty she would grow into, same blue-gray eyes as Olivia, but with their father's sharp intelligence behind them. "Hey," Olivia said, dropping her backpack by the door. "Sorry I'm late. Lab ran long." Mia looked up, her eyes immediately going to the bruises visible on Olivia's neck, despite her attempts to cover them with makeup and a scarf. Something flashed across her face. Anger, recognition, resignation. "You don't have to lie to me, you know," she said quietly. "I know about Ryan." Olivia froze, keys still in her hand. "What do you mean?" Mia set her phone down, screen up. On it was a local news article. Chicago businessman missing car found abandoned. "Everyone at school is talking about it. They know he was your boyfriend." Her voice dropped. "They know he hurt you." Olivia moved to the couch, sat beside her sister. "Mia, I'm glad he's gone." The fierceness in her voice was startling. "I've been waiting for him to kill you for months." "It wasn't that bad." "Yes, it was." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "I heard him, Olivia. Through the walls. I saw the makeup you thought covered everything. I'm not stupid." The silence between them stretched, filled with years of things unsaid. Since their parents died 3 years ago, Olivia had worked so hard to protect Mia from the harsh realities of their situation, the medical debts, the constant struggle to keep them both fed and housed while she finished school. She thought she'd succeeded. Apparently not. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Olivia finally said. "I should have been stronger. Should have left him sooner." "No," Mia shook her head emphatically. "Don't you dare apologize. He's the one who should be sorry. Is sorry, hopefully, wherever he is now." The edge in her sister's voice made Olivia look closer. "Mia, what do you know about what happened to Ryan?" Mia's eyes met hers, unflinching. "Nothing for sure, but I know you came home Saturday night looking like you could breathe for the first time in months. And I know there's a black car that's been parked across the street since Sunday morning." Olivia crossed to the window, peered through the blinds. Sure enough, a dark sedan was parked at the corner, the occupant invisible behind tinted windows. "Security," she murmured. "What? Nothing." She let the blinds fall back into place. "We should get some sleep. We both have early classes tomorrow." Later, after Mia had gone to bed, Olivia found herself staring at her sister's phone, still open to the article about Ryan. She scrolled through it, looking for any mention of Dominic Ricci. There was none. Just quotes from Ryan's coworkers saying he wasn't the type to disappear, that he was reliable, successful. A quote from his mother saying he'd seemed happier than ever recently. Lies. All lies that no one would question, because the truth that Ryan Sullivan was a monster who hid his true nature behind designer suits and charming smiles was inconvenient. She deleted the article from Mia's browser history and went to bed. The next 10 days passed with the strange rhythm of a life suspended between before and after. Ryan Sullivan remained missing. His mother called her twice, voice shaking, asking if she knew anything. She told her the same thing she told the police. No. Detective Williams, stopped by the restaurant, once more asked the same questions in different words, left with the same non-answers. Through it all, Dominic Ricci appeared at Castellano's every night like clockwork. He never sat in anyone else's section, never made a show of it. Just requested table 12, ordered dinner, left tips that Marco stopped commenting on after the third night. They didn't talk much beyond the necessary exchange of orders and pleasantries, but his presence felt like a shield she hadn't known she needed. Each night after her shift ended, his driver would appear at the back entrance to take her home, ensuring she never walked or took the bus alone after dark. At home, she discovered a new security system had been installed, cameras at each entrance, sensors on the windows, a silent alarm that connected directly to a private security company. She hadn't asked who paid for it. She didn't need to. On the 11th day after Ryan's disappearance, Dominic invited her to dinner. Not at Castellano's, but at a brownstone in Lincoln Park that he explained was one of his properties. It was the first time they'd spoken at length since that Sunday morning in her apartment. The brownstone was understated elegance, hardwood floors, tasteful art furniture that didn't advertise its cost but was clearly expensive. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed money, just quiet, confident wealth. He cooked for her, actually cooked, not takeout disguised on nice plates. Pasta with a sauce that smelled like someone's grandmother had spent hours perfecting it. Fresh bread, wine that probably cost more than her textbooks. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "My mother insisted I learn, said no man should expect a woman to take care of him." They ate at a small table overlooking a garden lit by string lights. For 20 minutes they talked about nothing important: her pharmacology exam, his meeting with suppliers, Mia's school projects. Normal conversation that felt surreal given everything underneath it. Finally, Dominic set down his fork and met her eyes directly. "The nightmares you're having, about Ryan, they'll fade." She stared at him, startled. "How did you know?" "I recognize the look, the way you check behind you even in safe places, the circles under your eyes." She looked down at her plate. "They're not exactly nightmares, more like questions. Things I can't bring myself to ask in daylight. So ask them now, bud." She took a deep breath. "Is Ryan dead? Would knowing for certain make you feel better or worse?" "I don't know." "Then perhaps that's your answer." They finished dinner in silence. As she helped clear the plates, she noticed a silver pocket watch sitting on a shelf in the living room. It was old, tarnished, the chain kinked in places. "That was my father's," Dominic said, noticing her gaze. "I keep it as a reminder." "Of what?" "That violence is inherited unless someone decides to break the chain." He moved to stand beside her, looking at the watch. "My father got it from his father, who was not a gentle man either. He meant to give it to me when I turned 18. He didn't live that long." "I have one too," she said quietly. "My dad's pocket watch. Ryan broke it during one of his episodes, threw it against the wall." Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. "Where is it now?" "In my dresser drawer. It doesn't work anymore. The face is cracked and the mechanism is damaged. I keep meaning to find someone who can fix it, but it's probably not worth the palm. May I see it sometime?" "Why? Oh, just curious." Later that night, as his driver took her home, she thought about the watch, about chains of violence broken or continued, about choices that ripple through generations. She wondered where Ryan was now, whether he was looking at the stars or buried beneath them. She wondered if she'd ever stop wondering. Thursday afternoon, she was between her pharmacology lecture and the start of her shift when her phone rang. Unknown number, but she'd started answering those since Ryan disappeared. "Is this Olivia Carter?" A woman's voice. Professional but urgent. "Yes. This is Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Your sister, Mia Carter, was brought in an hour ago following a motor vehicle accident. She's stable, but we need you here." The world tilted. Her backpack slipped off her shoulder, hitting the sidewalk with a thud that barely registered. "Is she okay?" "What happened?" "She has a concussion and we're monitoring for internal injuries. The doctor will explain everything when you arrive. How soon can you get here?" She looked around the street corner where she'd stopped calculating. Bus to the train to the hospital. Maybe an hour if everything connected perfectly. Mia alone and scared for an hour. "I'm coming now," she managed, already moving. The buses in Chicago ran on spite and prayer during rush hour. She stood at the stop watching 3 pass by 2, too full to take more passengers, panic building with each minute. Mia was 16. She was supposed to be invincible. She was supposed to be the one thing in Olivia's life that Ryan hadn't touched, hadn't ruined. A black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down and Dominic looked out at her. Get in. She didn't question it, didn't ask how he knew where she was or what she needed, just yanked open the door and climbed into the back seat. Northwestern Memorial, she said. My sister Mia, she's in the emergency room. They said there was an accident. I know. He was already giving directions to his driver. I have people who monitor things that matter. You received a call 12 minutes ago from the hospital. I was 3 blocks away. The car moved through traffic with aggressive efficiency, the driver navigating gaps she wouldn't have attempted. She pressed her hands together to stop them shaking. She's only 16, she said to no one in particular. Our parents died 3 years ago. Car accident, drunk driver. She was 13. I promised them I'd take care of her. Dominic didn't offer empty reassurances. Just let her talk. Ryan hated how much attention I gave her. Said I treated her like she was more important than him. She looked at her hands at the fading yellow bruises on her wrist. She is. She's the only family I have left. Nothing is going to happen to her, Dominic said, with a certainty she desperately wanted to believe. Northwestern has excellent trauma care. She's in the right place. They made it to the hospital in 17 minutes. Dominic followed her through the emergency room doors, and his presence somehow made the triage nurse move faster, call for the attending physician immediately instead of making her wait. Dr. Patel met them in a consultation room, a young woman with kind eyes and careful hands, as she pulled up Mia's scans on a computer screen. Your sister has a moderate concussion and bruised ribs from the seatbelt, she explained, pointing to the images. We've done a CT scan that shows no internal bleeding. She was very lucky. The other driver ran a red light, T-boned the passenger side where Mia was sitting. If she'd been driving, we'd be having a different conversation. Relief hit so hard, Olivia had to sit down. Dominic's hand found her shoulder steadying. Can I see her? She's asking for you, room 3. Mia looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, one side of her face swollen and bruised, an IV running into her left arm. But her eyes opened when Olivia entered and she tried to smile. Hey, she said, voice raspy. Sorry, I know you had work. Olivia sat in the chair beside her bed, took her uninjured hand. Work doesn't matter. Nothing matters except you being okay. My friend's mom was driving. She's fine too. Her car is totaled though. Mia's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Liv. I know we can't afford hospital bills right now. Don't worry about that. But Ryan always said. She stopped, awareness dawning. Wait, where is Ryan? He usually shows up when something happens to lecture me about being more careful. Olivia had been so focused on getting to the hospital, she hadn't prepared for this question. Mia was smart, observant. She'd noticed Ryan's absence eventually, but Olivia had hoped for more time. Ryan and I broke up, she said carefully. He's not around anymore. Good. The vehemence in her voice was surprising. He was terrible to you. I hated him. Mia. I'm not stupid, Olivia. I saw the bruises. I heard him yelling through the phone. I just didn't know how to help. Fresh tears spilled over. I should have done something. Hey, no. Olivia squeezed her hand gently. This wasn't your job. You're 16. Taking care of you is my job, not the other way around. A soft knock interrupted them. Dominic stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and a bottle of water. They said she could have fluids, he said, offering Olivia the water. Mia's eyes widened slightly, taking in Dominic's expensive suit, the way he moved through the hospital like he owned it. Who's that? She whispered to Olivia. A friend, Olivia said. He gave me a ride here. Some friend, Mia murmured, but she was too exhausted to push for details. Dr. Patel wanted to keep Mia overnight for observation standard protocol with concussions. Olivia planned to stay with her and called Marco to explain she wouldn't make her shift. He was surprisingly understanding, probably because Dominic had already called ahead to inform him. When Mia finally fell asleep, sedated and monitored, Olivia stepped into the hallway to find Dominic talking quietly with an administrator. They shook hands and the woman walked away with a satisfied expression. What was that about? Olivia asked. Your sister is being moved to a private room with better monitoring equipment. Dr. Patel will remain her primary physician, but I've arranged for a neurologist to consult on her concussion protocols. Dominic, I can't afford. You're not paying for any of this. His tone left no room for argument. Medical bills, follow-up appointments, physical therapy if she needs it. It's handled. I can't accept that. You can and you will. He guided her to a quiet corner of the hallway away from the nurse's station. Consider it an investment in your future. You're 6 months from finishing nursing school. I can't have you dropping out because of medical debt. Why are you doing this? He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because Ryan made you feel like you had to choose between your education and your sister, between your future and your survival. I'm showing you that that there are people who can help without demanding pieces of yourself in return. The next 3 days established a pattern she simultaneously craved and feared. Dominic drove her to the hospital each morning before her classes picked her up afterward to take her back for evening visiting hours. Mia's condition improved steadily. The private room he'd arranged had a window overlooking Lake Michigan equipment that beeped reassuringly through the nights she spent in the uncomfortable chair beside her sister's bed. On the fourth day, Mia was discharged with strict instructions about rest and concussion monitoring. Dominic's driver brought them home, carried the flowers and cards Mia had received from her school friends, up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. After Mia was settled on the couch with instructions to watch mindless television and call if she felt dizzy, Olivia walked Dominic down to the street where his car waited. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I don't know how I would have managed without you." "You would have found a way. You're resourceful." He opened the car door, paused. "I'll be at Castellanos tonight. Table 12. I'll be working." "I know." He drove away and she climbed back upstairs to find Mia watching her through the window with calculating interest. That evening at the restaurant, she served Dominic his usual table. They didn't talk about the hospital or Mia or Ryan's absence, just went through their familiar routine. Wine appetizers, entree, the kind of easy conversation that felt like coming home. Luca, the man who'd helped remove Ryan from the alley, sat with Dominic. As she cleared their dessert plates, she overheard fragments of conversation. "The Russian organization is asking questions," Luca said quietly. "They know you've been spending time with someone. They're looking for leverage." "Then they'll be disappointed," Dominic's voice was still. "Olivia is under my protection. That's not negotiable. Protection is one thing, but if this becomes more than that, if she becomes something you care about beyond obligation, they'll exploit it. You know how this works." "I know exactly how it works, which is why I'm prepared." She pretended not to hear, moved to the next table, but the conversation stayed with her. Russian organization, leverage, exploitation. Words that painted a picture of danger she was only beginning to understand. When Dominic left that night, he placed his usual generous tip under his water glass. But underneath was a new card with an address written in his handwriting. "Dinner," he said as he passed her. "Tomorrow night. Not here. Somewhere we can actually talk." She pocketed the card and watched him leave, already knowing she'd go even as every rational part of her brain screamed that getting closer to Dominic Ricci meant stepping deeper into a world that would change her in ways she couldn't predict. But he'd saved her from Ryan, cared for Mia without hesitation, shown her kindness that expected nothing in return. For the first time in 6 months, someone saw her as more than an obligation or a target or a burden. And that feeling was more dangerous than any Russian organization could ever be. The next evening, she arrived at the address. Dominic had given her another of his properties, a top-floor apartment in a building overlooking the river. The security in the lobby knew her name, directed her to a private elevator that opened directly into the apartment. Dominic was waiting, casual in a way she hadn't seen before. Dress shirt open at the collar, no-tie sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He'd cooked again, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the space. "Thank you for coming," he said, taking her coat. "Should I be worried about Russians?" she asked directly. A small smile touched his lips. "You heard that." "I did." He led her to the kitchen, poured her a glass of wine. "The Volkov organization. They control territory north of the city. They've been trying to expand south for the past year. It's a normal power struggle, nothing for you to worry about." "But they're watching me. They watch everyone connected to me, looking for vulnerabilities. It's business." He stirred the sauce on the stove. "I have people watching them watching you. Multiple layers of security. You're safe." She sipped her wine, studying him. "This is your world, isn't it? Organizations and territories and security layers." "Part of it." He dished pasta onto 2 plates, added sauce, fresh basil. "The part I'm trying to move away from." "What do you mean?" They sat at the dining table, the Chicago skyline glittering through the windows behind him. My father built his business through fear and violence. When I took over after his death, I started shifting operations, buying legitimate businesses, reinvesting profits into legal ventures. It's a slow process. Some obligations can't be walked away from overnight. But you want to go legitimate, he nodded. Completely eventually. The Volkovs and others like them make that complicated. They see any pullback as weakness to exploit. So you're caught. For now, but not forever. He looked at her directly. That's why being around me comes with complications. Complications you deserve to understand before this goes any further. Before what goes any further? Instead of answering, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet pouch, and placed it on the table between them. She opened it cautiously. Inside was her father's pocket watch restored, polished, the glass face replaced, the dent in the case repaired. "How did you get this?" she whispered. "I asked Luca to check your apartment for it while you were at the hospital with Mia. I know that was presumptuous. I apologize." She turned the watch over in her hands. The initials J.C. James Carter, her father, still visible on the back, but now the case gleamed, and when she pressed the button, it opened smoothly, the hands moving with precise ticks. "You fixed it. I know a watchmaker who specializes in antiques. It needed a new crystal and some work on the mechanism, but it's fully functional now." She held the watch against her chest, tears threatening. This piece of her father, this last tangible connection to him that Ryan had damaged in a fit of rage, was whole again. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. "Thank you," she managed. "Some broken things can be repaired," Dominic said quietly, "if the damage hasn't gone too deep, if someone cares enough to do the work." They finished dinner talking about Mia's recovery, about Olivia's upcoming finals, about books they'd both read. Normal conversation layered over the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. After dinner, they stood at the window, looking out at the city. Dominic's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, "and that makes you a target. I need you to understand that." She turned to face him. "I think I understood that the moment you pulled Ryan off me in that alley. I just didn't have a name for it yet." His kiss was different from Ryan's, gentle, at first asking rather than taking. Her response answered his unspoken question. Yes, this, yes, you, yes, despite everything. Later, as they stood at the elevator, her coat back on the watch safely in her pocket, he held her face between his hands. "We take this slowly, carefully, and you tell me the moment it becomes too much." She nodded, understanding all the things he wasn't saying. The danger, the complications, the fact that his world operated by different rules than the ones she'd known. As she rode the elevator down, she thought about choices and consequences, about Ryan's hands on her throat and Dominic's hands cradling her face, about violence that destroyed and violence that protected. She thought about her sister healing from injuries that could have been so much worse, about her parents who had taught her to value education and independence above all else. She stepped out into the Chicago night, where one of Dominic's cars waited to take her home, and realized she'd already made her choice the moment she'd pocketed that first business card. Everything since had been confirmation rather than decision. 2 days later, Olivia was walking to her car after her evening class when she noticed a man watching her from across the parking lot. He wasn't one of Dominic's men she'd grown familiar with, their watchful but respectful presence. This man was different. Blonde, hard-faced, with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She quickened her pace keys, clutched in her hand, heart racing. As she reached her car, another vehicle pulled up beside her, a black sedan with tinted windows. The passenger window lowered, revealing a man she'd never seen before. "Miss Carter," he said in a thick accent, "please get in. Mr. Volkov would like to speak with you." Fear turned her blood to ice. "No, thank you," she managed, fumbling with her keys. The man sighed, then opened his jacket enough to reveal the gun holstered beneath. "It wasn't a request." Before she could react, "Scream, run!" Another car screeched into the lot, Luca's SUV. It cut between her and the sedan tires, smoking. Luca was out of the driver's side in seconds, his own weapon drawn, two more men emerging from the back seats. "Back away from her now," Luca ordered, his voice deadly calm. The Russian driver swore, slammed the car into reverse, and peeled out of the parking lot. The blond man she'd noticed earlier was already gone, vanished into the shadows. Luca was at her side in an instant, guiding her to his vehicle. Are you hurt? No, They said Volkov wanted to talk to me. That's not all he wanted. Luca opened the passenger door for her. Dominic is waiting. We need to move you somewhere safe, now. As they drove through the Chicago night sirens wailing in the distance, Olivia realized the game had changed. She wasn't just a woman Dominic Ricci was protecting anymore. She was a weapon his enemies could use against him, and she had no idea what that meant for either of them. Luca drove through the Chicago night with practiced precision, taking turns. Olivia hadn't anticipated doubling back several times, constantly checking the mirrors. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, jaw tight with concentration. Where are we going? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Somewhere safe. Luca replied, not taking his eyes off the road. Dominic has a property outside the city, secure, remote. The city lights began to fade as they headed north, buildings giving way to suburbs, then to more isolated stretches of road lined with trees. After an hour of driving, they turned onto a private road that wound through dense forest, eventually opening onto the grounds of what could only be described as an estate. The main house was a sprawling stone structure illuminated by strategic lighting that emphasized its imposing presence without creating blind spots. The surrounding gardens were immaculately maintained, but Olivia noticed the high walls, the cameras disguised as landscape features, the guards positioned at key points around the perimeter. This wasn't just a luxury home, it was a fortress. Dominic was waiting at the front entrance, his face a mask of controlled fury. When he saw her step out of Luca's vehicle, something in his expression shifted, relief perhaps, or resolve. Are you hurt? He asked, moving to her side. No, Luca got there in time. Dominic nodded to Luca, a wordless exchange that spoke volumes about their history. Get her inside. I need to make calls. The interior of the house matched its exterior, elegant but understated wealth displayed through quality rather than ostentation. A woman in her 60s appeared in the foyer, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes Dominic's eyes, assessing Olivia with quiet interest. Mother, Dominic said, this is Olivia Carter. Olivia, my mother, Elena Ricci. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Elena said, her accent more pronounced than her son's. Come, you must be exhausted. I'll show you to your room. Wait, Olivia said, looking between them. My sister, Mia. She's alone at our apartment. If these people tried to get to me, already taken care of, Dominic assured her. 2 of my men picked her up 20 minutes ago. They're bringing her here. She'll be safe. The fact that he'd thought of Mia immediately, that he'd understood Olivia's priorities without needing to be told, made something in her chest tighten. Ryan would have dismissed her concerns, accused her of caring more about her sister than him. Dominic had simply acted. Elena led her upstairs to a suite of rooms larger than her entire apartment. The bathroom has everything you might need, she said, opening closets to reveal clothes in approximately Olivia's size. Dominic had these brought in when he called to say you were coming. How long have you known? Olivia asked. About me, I mean. Elena smiled, the expression softening the aristocratic planes of her face. My son has mentioned you. Not much, he's always been private, but enough for me to know you matter to him. She moved to the window, looked out at the grounds below. That makes you important to me as well. Because he's your son. Because he has never allowed himself to care about someone the way he cares about you. Not since his father died. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. I don't understand any of this. 2 weeks ago, I was just trying to survive until graduation. Now I'm in the middle of some kind of mafia war. Elena turned from the window, studied her thoughtfully. You look like you could use some tea, and perhaps some truths that my son might be too proud to share. Downstairs in the kitchen, as large and well-appointed as a professional restaurant, Elena made tea with practiced movements. The familiar routine was oddly comforting amidst the chaos. Dominic told you about his father, Elena said. It wasn't all a question. Some, that he was violent, that Dominic stopped him when he was 16. What he probably didn't tell you was that his father, Antonio, was once the head of the largest crime family in Chicago. When Dominic confronted him that day, he wasn't just standing up to an abusive father. He was challenging the authority of a very dangerous man. She set a cup of tea in front of Olivia. Antonio didn't just accept Dominic's ultimatum because he was afraid of his son. He accepted it because, in that moment, he recognized that Dominic had become strong enough to replace him. And did he replace him? When Antonio died, Dominic was 17, too young by traditional standards to take control. There were uncles, cousins who thought they should step in. A small smile touched Elena's lips. They underestimated my son's resolve. What happened to them? Dominic gave them a choice: accept his leadership or leave the family business entirely. Most chose to stay. Those who didn't were allowed to go in peace, provided they never interfered with family matters again. He didn't kill them, Olivia said, relief evident in her voice. No, that was the first sign that he would be different from his father. Antonio would have eliminated any challenge to his authority. Dominic found another way. Elena sipped her tea. That has been his approach from the beginning. Violence as a last resort, not a first impulse. Olivia absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with the man she was coming to know. But he still runs a criminal organization. He inherited one, Elena corrected gently, and has spent the last 28 years transforming it. When Antonio died, 90% of our family income came from illegal activities. Now it's less than 30% and decreasing every year. The sound of car tires on gravel drew their attention. Elena moved to the window. Your sister has arrived. Moments later, Mia burst into the kitchen, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and amazement. Olivia, what the hell is going on? These guys showed up at the apartment saying I was in danger and... She stopped abruptly, taking in the grand kitchen, Elena's presence the situation. Is this about Ryan? It's complicated, Olivia began. Miss Carter, Dominic said from the doorway. Welcome to my home. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. We had reason to believe you might be in danger. Mia looked him up and down with the unflinching assessment of a teenager. You're him, aren't you? The reason Ryan disappeared. Mia, Olivia hissed. What, am I wrong? Dominic's expression remained unreadable. Your sister was in danger. I helped to remove that danger. And now we're in danger again, Mia concluded. Because of you. Yes, Dominic acknowledged, surprising them both with his candor. Indirectly, there are people who would use you to get to me because they believe I care about your sister. Do you? Mia challenged. I do. The simple admission hung in the air between them. Elena broke the silence, standing and placing a hand on Mia's shoulder. Come, I'll show you to your room. It's next to your sister's. Then perhaps you'd like something to eat. The chef can prepare whatever you'd like. As Elena guided Mia from the kitchen, the teenager glanced back at Dominic. If anything happens to my sister because of you, I don't care who you are. I'll find a way to make you sorry. After they'd gone, Olivia exhaled. I'm sorry, she's protective. Don't apologize, her loyalty is admirable. Dominic sat across from her at the kitchen island. She reminds me of you. What happens now? You and Mia stay here where it's safe until I resolve the situation with the Volkovs. How long will that take? A few weeks, maybe longer. He met her eyes directly. I won't lie to you, Olivia. This is serious. Viktor Volkov sees you as leverage against me. He won't stop until he gets what he wants or understands that the cost would be too high. And what does he want? Territory, access to the ports I control, a foothold in Chicago that would allow him to expand his operation. Will you give it to him? Dominic's expression hardened. No, Volkov deals in human trafficking, among other things. Allowing him to expand his operation would mean more lives destroyed. I won't be responsible for that. Olivia tried to process the surreal turn her life had taken from nursing student with an abusive boyfriend to being at the center of a territorial dispute between crime families. What about school, my clinicals? I can't just disappear for weeks. I've already spoken with the dean of nursing at your university. You've been granted an emergency leave of absence for family reasons with extensions on all assignments and arrangements to complete your clinicals in a condensed time frame once you return. You spoke to my dean. Olivia was stunned. How did you even know who to contact? I make it my business to know everything about people who are important to me. Seeing her expression, he added, too much. Despite everything, she found herself smiling. A little, but I appreciate the thought. For the next few days, life at the estate settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mia, after her initial shock, adapted with the resilience of youth, exploring the grounds under guard supervision, making use of the indoor pool, and discovering the extensively stocked library. She even struck up a friendship with Sophia Luca's 16-year-old niece, who occasionally visited the estate. Olivia found ways to continue her studies remotely using the estate's impressive internet connection, and the study Dominic had set up for her, complete with medical textbooks and journals she hadn't even mentioned needing. Dominic himself was often absent, returning late at night, with the weight of his other life evident in the tension across his shoulders. On the rare evenings when he was present for dinner, Elena orchestrated conversation that carefully avoided any mention of business or danger, creating a strange bubble of normalcy amidst extraordinary circumstances. It was during one of these dinners, nearly a week into their stay, that Olivia finally asked the question that had been circling her mind. "How did it happen with Ryan, I mean? I think I deserve to know." The table fell silent. Elena and Mia exchanged glances, then Elena rose gracefully. "Mia, would you help me choose a film from the media room? I think tonight calls for something entertaining." When they had gone, Dominic set down his fork, considering his words carefully. "Are you certain you want these details?" "Yes." He nodded once, accepting her decision. "After what happened in the alley, Luca took Ryan to a warehouse we own near the lakefront. I questioned him about his relationship with you, about the abuse. He was—" Dominic's jaw tightened. "Unrepentant. Said you belonged to him, that he had the right to discipline you as he saw fit." The familiar language sent a chill through Olivia. How many times had Ryan used those exact words? "You belong to me. I'm just disciplining you for your own good." "I offered him a choice," Dominic continued. "Leave Chicago permanently, never contact you again, or face consequences he wouldn't survive. He chose poorly." "You killed him." It wasn't a question. "Yes." The simple admission hung between them. She had known, of course, from the moment Ryan disappeared, but hearing Dominic confirm it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Does that change how you see me?" Dominic asked, his voice carefully neutral. Olivia considered the question, searching her feelings. "I should be horrified," she admitted. "I know that's the normal reaction, but all I feel is relief that he can never hurt me again." She looked up, meeting Dominic's gaze. "What does that make me?" "Human," he said simply. "Someone who values her life and freedom. Someone who recognizes that some threats can't be reasoned with or reformed." Later that night, unable to sleep, Olivia wandered the quiet halls of the estate. She found Dominic in his study, bent over documents spread across an antique desk. He looked up when she entered, the tension in his expression softening. "You should be resting," he said, though there was no reproach in his voice. "I keep thinking about what you told me at dinner." She moved to stand near the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. "About Ryan, about the choice you gave him. Does it trouble you?" "Not in the way it should." She turned to face him. "What troubles me is that I'm not troubled, that I've accepted this world of yours where violence is sometimes the answer." Dominic set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "It isn't sometimes the answer in my world, Olivia. It's the last resort when all other options have been exhausted. With Ryan, I saw a man who wouldn't stop until he killed you. The law couldn't protect you. Restraining orders wouldn't have stopped him. And with Volkov, is violence the last resort there too? I'm trying to avoid that outcome. That's why we're meeting tomorrow, all the major families, neutral territory. I'm proposing new territorial boundaries, concessions on both sides." "And if he doesn't agree?" Dominic's silence was answer enough. "Let me come with you," she said suddenly. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. I'm already in danger. And maybe seeing me there, seeing that I'm not just some woman you're protecting, but someone who chooses to stand with you, would make a difference. Or it could make you an even more valuable target." He shook his head. "I won't risk you like that." "It's not your risk to take," she countered. "It's mine, and I'm choosing it." They argued long into the night, Dominic citing every logical reason why her presence would be dangerous, Olivia countering each argument with the emotional truth that she was already involved and already a target, already part of this world, whether they acknowledged it or not. In the end, as dawn began to break over the estate grounds, Dominic conceded. Not because she had convinced him it was safe, they both knew it wasn't, but because he recognized her right to make that choice for herself. "You'll stay behind me at all times," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion and worry. "Luca will be at your side every moment. If anything feels wrong, if I give the signal, you leave immediately with the security team. No questions, no hesitation." "Agreed." The meeting was set for neutral territory, an old, well-established Italian restaurant in the city that had hosted similar gatherings for generations. The owners closed it for the evening, ensuring privacy. Security teams from all families swept the premises beforehand, guaranteeing no surveillance, no weapons except those carried by designated security personnel. Olivia wore a simple black dress that Elena had selected, elegant but understated. Her hair was pulled back, minimal jewelry, nothing that would draw attention. She was to be present but not prominent, a statement by her very existence, not by any words she might speak. The restaurant's private room was arranged with a large rectangular table, representatives from 5 major families, positioned according to traditional hierarchies. Dominic sat at one end, Volkov at the other, the visual positioning, making clear that this was primarily a negotiation between their two organizations. Viktor Volkov was not what Olivia had expected. In her mind, she'd pictured someone physically imposing, overtly threatening. Instead, he was slender, almost scholarly in appearance, with wire-rimmed glasses and meticulously groomed silver hair. Only his eyes betrayed his nature, cold, calculating, assessing every person in the room as either an asset or an obstacle. Those eyes lingered on Olivia for a moment too long when she entered behind Dominic, a flicker of surprise quickly masked by practiced indifference. She felt Luca tense beside her, his hand moving imperceptibly closer to the weapon she knew he carried. The negotiations began with formal pleasantries, tradition dictating certain protocols be observed. Then they moved to the substance, territorial boundaries, control of specific ports, access to distribution channels. Olivia understood perhaps half of what was being discussed, the language deliberately vague, even in this private setting. Dominic presented his proposal with the confidence of a man accustomed to being heard. New boundaries that would give Volkov limited access to areas he coveted while maintaining Dominic's control over the most crucial territories. Concessions that appeared generous on the surface but contained subtle limitations that Olivia could identify even with her limited understanding. Volkov countered, pushing for more as everyone had expected. The dance continued, offer counter-offer, veiled threats disguised as observations, alliances, shifting subtly around the table as other family representatives weighed their own interests against the outcome of this negotiation. Olivia remained silent throughout as instructed, but she watched. She noticed how Volkov's gaze periodically returned to her, calculating something she couldn't quite decipher. She noticed how the other family's representatives studied the dynamic between her and Dominic, drawing their own conclusions. The breakthrough came unexpectedly after nearly 3 hours of negotiation. Volkov leaned back in his chair, removed his glasses, and addressed Dominic directly. "Your proposal has merit, Mr. Ricci, but I remain unconvinced of your commitment to our mutual cooperation." His accent was subtle but distinctive, his English precise. "Perhaps as a gesture of goodwill you might consider introducing me properly to your companion." His eyes shifted to Olivia. "I find myself curious about someone who has apparently become so integral to your considerations." The room went silent, the request hovering like a blade. Everyone present understood its significance. Volkov wasn't just asking for an introduction. He was testing boundaries, asserting dominance, making clear that he saw Olivia as a chess piece in play. Dominic's expression remained unchanged, but Olivia felt the tension radiating from him. Before he could respond, she spoke, breaking her silence for the first time. "Mr. Volkov," she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning beneath her composed exterior. "I believe we were introduced the night your men attempted to abduct me from my university parking lot. Not the most conventional greeting, but memorable nonetheless." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Volkov's eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication that she had caught him off guard. "Miss Carter," he acknowledged, "you misunderstand. That was merely an invitation to conversation, perhaps delivered with excessive enthusiasm by my associates. Is that what you call pointing a gun at someone these days? An enthusiastic invitation?" She held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated, despite the warning pressure of Luca's hand on her arm. Volkov studied her for a long moment, then laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, but carrying a certain reluctant appreciation. "You choose interesting company, Dominic. A woman with spirit." His attention returned to the documents before him. "Very well, I accept your proposal with the amendments we've discussed. But understand this." His eyes flicked to Olivia once more. "My organization will be watching closely to ensure all parties honor their commitments. The meeting concluded with formal handshakes, documents signed, witnesses from each family acknowledging the agreement. As they prepared to leave, Volkov approached Olivia directly, Dominic and Luca immediately moving closer. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "a word of advice, if I may. The world you've chosen to enter doesn't forgive weakness or hesitation. Dominic Ricci has enemies beyond myself, some of whom might not be as reasonable as I am." He smiled thinly. "Consider carefully whether the man is worth the price you may be asked to pay." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his security team falling into formation around him as they exited. The drive back to the estate was tense, Dominic unusually silent, his jaw tight. Only when they were safely behind the estate's gates did he speak. "You shouldn't have engaged with him directly," he said, his voice controlled but with an undercurrent of anger. "That wasn't part of our agreement." "It worked, didn't it? He accepted your proposal." "That's not the point. Volkov is dangerous, Olivia. More dangerous than you can possibly understand." "Then help me understand," she challenged. "Stop trying to protect me from the truth and treat me like a partner in this, whatever this is between us." He stared at her for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "You're right. Come with me." In his study, Dominic poured them each a drink, then unlocked a cabinet and removed a file. He spread photographs across his desk, surveillance images of Volkov's organization, police reports, newspaper clippings detailing disappearances and deaths that had never been officially connected to the Russian. "Viktor Volkov isn't just a rival crime boss," Dominic explained. "He's a true believer in the old ways, brutality as business practice, terror as a management tool. The women his organization traffics, the communities destroyed by the drugs he distributes, the businesses ruined by his protection rackets. These aren't unfortunate side effects of his operation. They're the foundation of it." Olivia studied the images, the evidence of lives destroyed. "And what makes your organization different?" It was the question she'd been avoiding, the moral compromise at the heart of their relationship. Dominic didn't flinch from it. "We're not saints, Olivia. I won't pretend otherwise. But we have lines we don't cross. We don't traffic in humans. We don't deal in drugs that destroy communities. We don't target civilians." He met her gaze directly. "And everything I've built over the last 28 years has been moving us toward legitimacy, toward a future where the Ricci name means business, not crime. How long will that take?" "Longer than I'd hoped, but not as long as I once feared." He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "What happened today accelerates the timeline. With the new territorial agreements, we can consolidate our legitimate operations, begin divesting from the remaining illegal activities. And Volkov will just accept that. No, he'll look for weaknesses, for opportunities to break the agreement. But he'll be cautious now. Today showed him that I have support from the other families, that a direct move against me would have consequences beyond our two organizations." Olivia considered this, trying to see the complex chess match from all angles. "What does this mean for us? For Mia and me? It means you can return to your lives soon. Not immediately, we'll wait a few weeks to ensure Volkov honors the agreement, but soon." His expression softened. "It also means we need to decide what happens next. What you want to happen next." The question hung between them, weighted with possibilities. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted outside the study. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. Luca burst through the door without knocking, his normally composed expression tense with urgency. "We have a problem," he announced. "The FBI agent Coleman, he's been working with Volkov all along, and they're moving on the estate. Now." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Security teams mobilized, contingency plans activated. Olivia and Mia were moved to a safe room deep within the estate, Elena with them, while Dominic and Luca coordinated the response. Through the estate's security system, Olivia watched as vehicles approached the gates, not the frontal assault she'd expected, but a more strategic positioning, blocking exits, establishing perimeters. Among them, she recognized Detective Williams, or Agent Coleman, as she now knew him to be, directing operations with the confident authority of someone who believed victory was assured. "He's been investigating Dominic all along," she realized aloud, "using Ryan's disappearance as an entry point." "Not investigating," Elena corrected grimly. "Setting up. Coleman has been on Volkov's payroll for years. This isn't an FBI operation, it is Volkov breaking the agreement before the ink is even dry." A new alert on the security system drew their attention. Breach at the east perimeter. Armed intruders on the grounds. The calm, professional response of Dominic's security team was at odds with the chaos unfolding across the monitors. Mia moved closer to Olivia, her teenage bravado replaced by genuine fear. What happens now? Olivia wrapped an arm around her sister's shoulders, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. Dominic has planned for this. We're safe here. As if summoned by her words, the safe room door opened, revealing Dominic and Luca. Both were armed, both moved with the focused intensity of men accustomed to crisis. Change of plans, Dominic announced. They've breached too many entry points. This location is compromised. Where are we going? Olivia asked, already gathering her sister closer. There's a tunnel system beneath the estate dating back to Prohibition. It leads to a secondary property half a mile away. We have vehicles waiting there. He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze lingering on Olivia. Stay close. Move quickly. No matter what happens, keep going forward. The tunnel was narrow, dimly lit by emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows along the rough stone walls. They moved in formation, Luca leading, then Elena and Mia, Olivia next, with Dominic bringing up the rear, constantly checking behind them. They had covered perhaps half the distance when the first explosion rocked the tunnel, dust and small debris raining down from the ceiling. Mia cried out in fear, Elena steadying her with surprising strength. Keep moving. Dominic ordered, his voice calm despite the urgency of their situation. The tunnel structure will hold. A second explosion closer this time sent larger chunks of concrete falling around them. Olivia felt Dominic's hand at her back, urging her forward, shielding her with his body as they ran through the increasingly unstable passage. They emerged into a smaller building, a guest house, Olivia realized, designed to look like a caretaker's residence, but equipped with security features and escape vehicles. Through its windows, she could see the main estate in the distance, smoke rising from one wing. They've breached the safe room, Luca reported, checking a security feed on his phone. They know we've evacuated. How long before they trace the tunnel? Dominic asked. Minutes, not hours. Then we don't have time to debate. Get them to the secondary location. I'll create a diversion. No, Olivia grabbed his arm. Whatever you're planning, there has to be another way. There isn't. Volkov wants me, not you. If I draw them off, give you time to get clear. And then, what, you think he'll just let you walk away? You said yourself, he doesn't honor agreements. I don't expect to walk away, Dominic said quietly. I expect to end this once and for all. The realization of what he intended hit her like a physical blow. You're planning to kill Volkov. And Coleman, cut off both heads of the snake. It's suicide, Luca interjected, unusually direct in his challenge. Even for you, Dominic. The odds are irrelevant. My priority is getting all of you to safety. And what about after? Olivia demanded, tears threatening, despite her efforts to remain calm. What about everything you've built, the legitimate future you've been working toward? It continues with or without me. Dominic cupped her face in his hands, his expression softening. I've made provisions. Everything transfers to you and Mia with Luca as trustee until you're ready to assume control. The legitimate businesses, the properties, all of it. I don't want your empire. I want you alive. A crash from the direction of the tunnel entrance ended their argument. They're coming through, Luca warned, drawing his weapon. We're out of time. The next moments happened with the surreal clarity that accompanies extreme danger. Dominic kissed Olivia once fierce and final, then pushed her toward the exit where vehicles waited. Elena and Mia were already being guided into an armored SUV by Dominic's security team. Go, he ordered. Luca, get them out, now. Olivia felt Luca's hand on her arm, pulling her toward the vehicles, even as her instincts screamed to stay with Dominic. She resisted breaking free of his grip. Olivia, please, Dominic implored, the command in his voice giving way to something more vulnerable. I can't focus on what needs to be done if I'm worrying about you. Then don't do it. Come with us. They'll follow. You know they will. This ends now, or it never ends. The truth of his words hung between them, undeniable, despite her desperate wish to find another solution. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Time had run out. I love you, she said, the words torn from her, despite all the reasons they shouldn't be true. Something in Dominic's expression shifted, surprise perhaps, or a resolution strengthened. Then live, for both of us, if necessary. This time when Luca pulled her toward the waiting vehicle, she didn't resist. As the SUV pulled away, tires spinning on gravel, she watched through the rear window as Dominic turned to face the approaching threat, weapon drawn, standing his ground as he had so many times before. The last she saw of him was his solitary figure, backlit by the flames now consuming part of the estate, a man prepared to make his final stand to protect what he loved. 3 months after the confrontation at the estate, Olivia sat beside Mia's hospital bed, watching her sister sleep peacefully after another round of physical therapy. The recovery had been long and difficult. Mia had sustained more serious injuries during their escape than initially diagnosed, requiring surgery to repair damage to her leg. But the doctors were optimistic now. She would walk normally again given time. The door opened softly and Olivia looked up to see Elena entering with 2 coffee cups. The older woman had become a constant presence in their lives, offering the kind of maternal guidance neither Carter's sister had experienced since their parents' death. "Any change?" Elena asked, handing Olivia a cup. "The doctor says she might be able to come home next week." Olivia sipped the coffee gratefully. "Have you heard anything?" Elena's expression softened. "Luca called an hour ago. It's done. The last of Volkov's organization has been dismantled. The FBI, the real FBI, is arresting the remaining members as we speak." And Coleman? Facing multiple charges, federal prosecution, he won't see daylight for decades. Olivia nodded, relieved but still troubled by the question she couldn't bring herself to ask. Elena seemed to read her thoughts. "Dominic is still in recovery. The doctors say he's making remarkable progress for someone who took 3 bullets." Elena's hand covered Olivia's. "He's asking for you." "I can't leave Mia. I'll stay with her. She'll understand." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. She'd been avoiding this moment, fearing what she might find. The last image she had of Dominic was his solitary figure, prepared to sacrifice himself for her safety. The weeks since had been a blur of uncertainty and whispered updates from Luca, who had managed Dominic's organization in his absence. The private recovery facility was located in a converted mansion on Chicago's North Shore, its grounds heavily secured by men Olivia now recognized as Dominic's. They nodded respectfully as Luca escorted her through quiet hallways to a suite overlooking Lake Michigan. She paused at the door, her heart racing. "Is he different?" Luca understood her fear. "He's still Dominic, just a little slower for now." When she entered, Dominic was sitting in an armchair by the window reviewing documents spread across a side table. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes, those dark, intense eyes, were unchanged when they found her. Olivia, just her name, but it carried everything they hadn't said. "You should be in bed," she said, medical training overtaking emotion. "I've had enough of beds." He set aside the papers. "How is Mia?" "Better. Coming home soon." She moved closer, her eyes cataloging his visible injuries, the careful way he held himself. "They said you took 3 bullets. 4, actually. But who's counting?" Despite everything, she found herself smiling. "I am. I'm the nurse, remember? I remember everything." He reached for her hand, and she allowed herself to take it, feeling the strength still present in his grip. "Including that you said you loved me. I thought you were going to, Dee. And now that I didn't," she met his gaze directly. "It's still true." Something in his expression shifted, relief perhaps, or resolution. "Volkov is dead. His organization is finished. Coleman will spend the rest of his life in prison." "I know," Elena told me. "What she didn't tell you is that this creates an opportunity. The legitimate businesses, the imports, the restaurants, the real estate, they're all stable, ready for full transition. Dominic, I made you a promise, Olivia, a future without fear, without looking over your shoulder." He squeezed her hand. "I'm keeping it." 6 months later, on a crisp October evening, exactly 1 year after they first met, Olivia stood in the living room of her new apartment, adjusting her graduation cap in the mirror. The nursing degree had been hard-won, delayed by the chaos that had engulfed their lives, but completed with honors. "You look perfect," Mia said from the doorway, leaning slightly on her cane. The doctor said she wouldn't need it much longer. "Very professional. Nervous perfect or actual perfect?" "Both." Mia grinned. "Dominic is waiting downstairs. He said to tell you they're holding your seat at Northwestern." Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where Olivia had secured a position in the trauma unit. where she had once brought Mia after the accident. Life had a way of coming full circle. Dominic was waiting beside his car, looking more like himself than he had in months. The physical therapy had restored his strength, though he sometimes still moved with care when he thought no one was watching. He wore a perfectly tailored suit as always, but something about him was different, less shadowed perhaps. The weight of Volkov's threat lifted. "Ready?" he asked. "Almost." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her father's pocket watch. "For luck." His smile was tender as he took it, running his thumb over the polished surface. "You don't need luck. You've earned this." The graduation ceremony passed in a blur of names and faces. When they called Olivia Carter, she walked across the stage to accept her degree, catching sight of Dominic, Mia, and Elena in the audience. Her family unexpected and unconventional as it was. After the ceremony, Dominic drove them to the Chicago lakefront. The restaurant overlooking the waters was exclusively reserved for their celebration, the staff discreetly efficient as they served champagne and congratulatory toasts. Later, as the evening wound down, Dominic led Olivia onto the restaurant's terrace. The city spread before them, lights glittering against the night sky. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. She expected another thoughtful gift. Dominic had proven himself remarkably attentive over the months of recovery and rebuilding. Instead, he produced a folder of legal documents. "What's this?" "The final transfers. As of this morning, all my legitimate businesses operate completely independently of any other interests. The restaurants, the import company, the real estate holdings, all clean, all legal." She took the folder, skimming the documents with growing amazement. "How did you manage this so quickly?" "I had motivation." His eyes met hers. "You once asked me how long it would take to go legitimate. The answer is exactly 1 year from the night I first saw bruises on a waitress's wrist and decided some things are worth changing for." The weight of his words settled around her. He had restructured his entire empire, severed connections built over decades, all while recovering from near-fatal wounds. "There's something else." He took her hand, guiding her to face him fully. "The FBI has officially closed the Ryan Sullivan case. Cold case, they're calling it. You're free of that shadow, too." Relief washed through her. "So what happens now?" "That depends." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. "I promised you a future without fear, without looking over your shoulder." He opened the box, revealing a ring with a single perfect diamond. "I'd like to be part of that future if you'll have me." The ring caught the city lights as she took the box from his hands. "Are you sure this life, our life, it will never be entirely normal?" "Normal is overrated." His smile held both amusement and tenderness. "I prefer extraordinary, like falling in love with a waitress who was brave enough to stand up to monsters, both human and organizational." Olivia looked from the ring to Dominic to the city beyond, where their unlikely story had begun. She thought about the bruised and frightened woman she'd been afraid to reach for help, about the path that had brought her here, painful, dangerous, but ultimately leading to a place she could never have imagined. "Yes," she said, slipping the ring onto her finger, "to an extraordinary future." As he drew her into his arms, she knew there would always be complexities in loving Dominic Ricci. There would always be aspects of his world that operated in shadows, but he had proven beyond any doubt that some shadows could give way to light if someone cared enough to make it happen. Later that night, as they returned home to the penthouse that had become their shared space, Dominic placed her father's pocket watch on the mantel, the timepiece that had been broken and restored like so many pieces of their lives. "You know," Olivia said, watching him, "when I was little, my dad used to say that time doesn't heal wounds. People do. The clock just keeps ticking, marking the moments when we choose to heal or choose to hurt." Dominic considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Your father was a wise man. He would have liked you. Eventually." She smiled. "After the initial shock of finding out what you do for a living." "What I did," he corrected gently. "The past is where it belongs." As if to punctuate his words, Mia and Elena arrived laughing about something that had happened at the graduation reception. The sound filled the apartment with warmth that had nothing to do with power or danger or the complicated world they had navigated. This was the future Dominic had promised her. Not perfect, not without its complexities, but built on choice rather than fear, on protection rather than possession. Outside Chicago continued its eternal rhythm. Somewhere in the city, new dangers would arise, new challenges would emerge. But for tonight, for this moment marked by her father's restored watch, Olivia Carter allowed herself to believe in the extraordinary future they had chosen together.